Hello and welcome to Unapologetics. I am Brently, and this is we're on to part two of the cosmological argument. This is something that it seems to come up so frequently that I feel like it's going to take more than just one episode. I mean, there was to a point there was even a an atheist podcaster, and I don't want him to get harassed, so I'm not going to say his name or anything like that. Was an atheist podcaster, did a quite popular YouTube show on counter apologetics and whatnot, and he did a lot of debates with different people. He ended up becoming a fucking Muslim. And when asked why you became, hey man, like, why did you become a Muslim? He was like, because of the Kalam Cosmological argument. Not even fucking kidding. So, the first, thing that comes to my mind as something that we should address, and and was not addressed in the last episode, is the concept of nothingness, because a lot of this has to do with why is there something rather than nothing, and a lot of times my answer to that is because if there was nothing, there'd be no one to ask why there's nothing. you know so there's something because there is something, and the only reason that we can ask the question why is there something rather than nothing is because there is something. I know that's kind of like a non-answer, but it's how could anybody answer ask that question if there was nothing? They couldn't. This is post hoc rationalization. Or just rationalizing after the fact. I'm not sure if it falls into the category of post hoc, but the concept of nothingness is incoherent. You could not possibly have a time, and I went over this a little bit before because we were talking about a timeless, spaceless being, right? And while that's impossible, it's also impossible to have a time where there wasn't time, where the entire concept of time didn't exist. Everything was trapped in between 0 and 0 seconds. That's not possible. And for them to say, like, for something coming out of nothing, in the Big Bang was something coming out of nothing. No, it wasn't. Nobody said there was a nothing for the something to come out of, right? You would have to demonstrate that there was ever a time when there was absolutely nothing. You're telling me there was no space, time, or matter at all before the Big Bang. And we kind of went over in the last one that it was there. It was just in a different form. But there was no nothing because the concept of nothing is incoherent. Here are 5 problems with William Lane Craig's Kalam Cosmological argument. William Lane Craig, if you're not familiar, is basically the guy that all Christian apologists turn to as if he is like the authority on the matter. He's very dishonest. He does a lot of debates. I believe it was the Hitchens debate where, Hitchens addressed all these things, and Craig just constantly ignored them, and then literally said he did nothing to address my, this, that, and the other. When, he had addressed everything. He addressed everything and knocked it into the ground. He knocked it out of the park. And and William Lane Craig's only rebuttal to that was he didn't address anything that I brought up. And it was stunning, the level of just incoherent nonsense of a response. It was just like, who are you talking to then? What's going on here? You're just It's like you would have said this had he said anything. It doesn't matter what he said. It doesn't matter how well he dismantled your arguments. You would have just been like, he did not dismantle my arguments, and that was like your argument. Like, that's so fucking real, man. It's crazy. Look up William Lane Craig debates Christopher Hitchens, and I mean, you will be amazed. It's an incredible, I've just never seen an apologist, a Christian apologist, get buried and then sit there and pretend like they came out winning. Like it was like Joey-esque, Joey from Friends-esque, like being ridiculously stupid but confident at the same time. It's incredible. But this is 5 major problems with William Lane Craig's Kalam cosmological argument. The introduction is the Kalam cosmological argument is an argument for the existence of God that Craig developed during his doctoral work in the 1970s. While it can be formulated in various ways, here I will consider the following version. Okay, premise 1. The universe began to exist. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. It had a cause. Premise 3. If the universe had a cause, that cause must be a personal agent. Conclusion. A personal agent caused the universe to begin to exist. So he takes, we were talking about on the last episode, your regular, cosmological argument, which is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. And then they updated it to the Kalam cosmological argument, which is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. And if I said that before, the actual cosmological argument is just everything that exists has a cause for its existence. Anyway, so there is a simpler form of the Kalam which ends at premise 2, and hence concludes merely that the universe had a cause. Yeah, and that's kind of what we went over yesterday. However, since Craig uses the Kalam to demonstrate the existence of God, I believe it is important to make this aspect of the argument explicit by including premise 3. The Kalam has attracted a great deal of attention in recent years, both in popular debates and also in philosophical literature. However, in my view, the argument is fatally flawed. In this article, I shall briefly outline 5 major problems with Craig's defense of the Kalam, showing how he fails to establish the conclusion that the universe had a personal cause. To me, that's just insane. Like, why does it have to be fucking personal? Just because you really like your God to exist and really like to have reasonable arguments for that God's existence. Jeez. Readers interested a more detailed discussion of these issues should consult my book, Unreasonable Faith. I will definitely be checking out that book. This is from the godlesstheist.com. The problem of the extent of the present. Craig has stated that when he talks about the universe beginning to exist, he means this in a very sense. Specifically, he means that the universe came into being from a state of non-being. As Craig has said many times, this depends on a particular understanding of the nature of time, called presentism. According to this view, only the present exists. The past and the future do not exist. The past consists of a series of moments which came into being and then went out of being, while the future consists of a series of moments which will come into being, but haven't yet done so. This view of time contrasts with competing view known as the tenseless theory of time. This view of time holds that the past, present, and future all exist alongside each other, just at different temporal parts of the history of the universe. In this view, there is no objective present. Instead, the past is just the part of the universe that exists in the before than direction, while the future is the part of the universe that exists in the later than direction. Under the tenseless theory of time, a universe with a finite age would not have come into being from nothing, or from non being, but would simply be extended a finite time in the earlier than direction. This means that under a tenseless theory of time, the universe could not have began to exist in the way that Craig believes is necessary for the Kalam to succeed. Because of this, Craig has stated definitely that the Kalam cosmological argument presupposes from start to finish, a theory, not a tenseless time, but of tensed time. According to Craig, presentism, or presentism, I guess is the it's like I'm putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there. The view that only the present exists is vital for the Kalam to succeed. But this leads naturally to the question, what exactly counts as present? The problem is that Craig has no sensible answer to this question. One possibility is that the present could consist of an infinitesimally short instant, with an infinite collection of such instants forming a finite interval, just like the real numbers. But this won't work because it would imply that actual infinities could exist, which conflicts with Craig's various philosophical arguments against the possibility of an infinitely old universe. A second possibility is that the present could consist of a discrete unit of time with successive discrete presents following one after the other with no time in between, just like the natural numbers. This is very confusing. I'm going to be honest with y'all. This is why I'm reading this outright, because I'm here learning with y'all. All right. But this won't work either, as it would mean that God was somehow restricted to act only as these discrete moments, but couldn't act in between them. If neither of these possibilities is suitable, what is left? Craig's answer is that the present consists of the present non-metrical interval, the length of which varies depending upon the context. He describes this as follows: the extent of the present depends upon the extent of the entity described as present. The duration stipulated to be present will be an arbitrary finite duration centered on a conceptually specified instant. Craig even says that this interval can be further divided into present, past, and future parts. Although creative, this solution is completely absurd. Indeed, it is essentially unintelligible. Thank you. Okay, I was like, am I just stupid? Like, what is happening? How can it be the case that we bring into being a period of time just by referring to it? It seems that according to Craig's view, dinosaurs were brought back to life when humans discovered them and began referring to them. Also, if, as Craig claims, only the present exists, then how can there be parts of the present interval that are past and parts that are future, neither of which exists? How can something both exist and not exist? That violates the most basic concept of logic, of one of the first law of logic, if they're numbered, I would say, the law of non-contradiction is, just X cannot be X and not X simultaneously. So I thought that was just an interesting, and Craig is their guy, man. Like, he is the dude to come to for this type of stuff when it comes to any, any kind of, like, apologetic arguments. If you're talking to a Christian, they will mention his name at least 3 times. If you're in the middle of a debate with any Christian that has any experience in debate, they're going to mention his name several times. He just is he's kind of the more modern version of C.S. Lewis, who was the original apologist, from that time period. And then, of course, there was, folks even earlier than that, of course. But he, as far as like the last, 60 years or whatever, William Lane Craig is the dude. He is the guy. So I want to take a second and play a little bit from Cosmic Skeptic, he's great. I really like his debates. I really like his videos. He breaks things down very, simply. For people like me, I'm not the brightest. That's my whole point, is I'm learning here with y'all, okay? And I'm just going to kind of regurgitate what I'm learning as I'm learning it, So this is from the Kalam Cosmological Arguments for God, episode number 4. So this is from a bit ago. It's from 2017. But like I said, he's really good.
Driving force behind something happening. I mean, does a leaf choose to fall off of a tree? But even if you could prove that there was some kind of consciousness behind the universe, Turek still makes no link as to why this would need to be a personal God. I mean, who's to say this God would still be around? Who's to say that it cares about humans or intervenes in worldly affairs? And for that matter, who's to say that it would be one God? Why not some kind of polytheistic council? And who's to say that it's not some kind of evil God with evil intentions? The list is unending. This argument offers absolutely no specificities on the nature of this prime mover. And look, this whole argument exists for the sake of it being impossible for there to be an infinite regress of causation. But is that really an impossibility?
See, this is where I really want to get into, because I, myself, and this is not, I'm not a scientist, I'm not, anything, of any stature at all. I have no place in any ivory tower at all. I was homeschooled and never went to college. So everything I've learned since, actually becoming an atheist and actually giving a shit about learning real, true things. Anyway, my point is that I don't know how you could know that it isn't an infinite regress. They try to say that if it goes infinitely, and we discussed this briefly in the last episode, if you go infinitely in the past, you could never possibly arrive at today, but that's only because infinity is incalculable. So let's see what his kind of take is on this.
I mean, to be sure, our observable universe did have a beginning. The Big Bang did happen. I mean, you can actually see it with the right kind of telescope. In fact, if you want to see a video on some proofs for the Big Bang, do let me know in the comments. It's been something that I've been considering doing for a while, so if you want to see that, do let me know. Now, theists often point to the Big Bang and say, well, look, here's the beginning of everything in existence. There must have been some kind of cause behind it. But hold on, because the Big Bang has never claimed to be the beginning of everything. Rather, it's only ever claimed...
See, okay, that's the thing. It's not the beginning of everything, right? And it doesn't answer the question, it was never saying that something came out of nothing, because, as we just discussed, the concept of nothingness is incoherent, and the Big Bang is not the beginning of everything. So let him continue. I'll stop interrupting. I'm such an interrupter,
claimed to be the beginning of everything that we know of. Perhaps there were universes before ours. Perhaps the death of one universe is the Big Bang of the next, and this could be some kind of infinite chain. Perhaps there's a multiverse, and not even a multiverse of separate entities, but maybe one large, infinitely large fabric in which there are sort of localized areas of activity, one of which is our observable universe, which did have its own beginning. There's simply no way for us to know. Aquinas, Craig, and Turek alike assume some kind of singular grand beginning to not only our universe, but anything that does, will, and can exist. And this
So yeah, okay. So you said Aquinas too was that he was the even earlier boss man when it comes to Christian apologetics, but you heard like right in the middle is Lane Craig, who is of course the daddy of all this. He actually has, and we're gonna play some clips from his debate with William Lane Craig. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. That would be a good spot for an ad break. Nah, I don't want to do that, man. That's weird, Get BetterHelp. With BetterHelp, you can get a licensed therapist from wherever you are. And if you don't want to be on see them on your phone or on video, you don't have to. You can get good quality therapy online for an affordable price that's more affordable than if you didn't have insurance and you tried to get therapy. All right, now back to the episode. Get BetterHelp.
Simply no proof to back this up. There's a lot that we don't know about the laws of physics. There's probably a lot that we can't know about the laws of physics. I mean, let's not forget that we are constrained to one single universe. There's no way for us to compare it with any others. We can test things within the universe because we
have a sample set of one, and we're all evaluating this one sample set and then coming to conclusions about, how it began without ever seeing a universe come into existence that we can measure, as in contrast to our universe. So yeah, he makes really good points. I really like the way he thinks and breaks it down.
Make control variables when we have more than one example of the thing that we're trying to test. But we shouldn't be so naive to assume that everything that applies to things within the universe also applies to the universe itself. To do so is to commit the fallacy of composition, and this is one of Bertrand Russell's prime objections to the...
I feel like let me see if I can guess this before we get there. The fallacy of composition is like where you assume fallaciously that because of something is part of a whole, that the rest of it acts the same way as the part. So if one person from Black Lives Matter lit something on fire, like a dumpster on fire, then assuming that all Black Lives Matter protesters light things on fire, that's kind of like a fallacy of composition. As best I can tell. Anyway, let's see.
Kalam Cosmological argument. Here's an example of the logic. No atoms are alive. Therefore, nothing made of atoms is alive. You can see the problem here. Now, this isn't to say that this logic doesn't work sometimes. There's a good example from carneades.org, I'll link in the description, of a brick wall. Okay, suppose we had a brick wall of which all of the bricks were red. Does that mean that the wall itself is red? Well, yes, of course it does. But suppose we said that every brick was small. Does that mean that the wall itself was small? Well, no. Just because the bricks are small doesn't mean the wall itself is small. Just because everything within the universe has a cause doesn't mean the universe itself has a cause. But it's important to recognize here that we're not saying that there was definitely no cause behind the universe, or if there was, that it definitely wasn't a god. Okay, it's the theist that's making an active claim, and we're simply trying to rebut it. This series, this Arguments for God series, is a series of rebuttals, not a series of arguments, okay, because the burden of proof does not lie with the atheist. But with that out of the way, let's conclude with a summary of...
That's also very important. I probably should have included that in the first video, the first episode of this little series here. The person making the claim is the one that has the burden of proof. If they are, if somebody's saying that a magical dragon, flew past them on 4th Street and 38th, it's up to them to demonstrate that it's true, or at least give us logical arguments for why we should believe that it's true, that are both valid and sound, which I don't even know how you could possibly do that with a dragon flying, past you at any time in space. I don't know. Jesus.
Of the Kalam Cosmological argument. So here goes. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. I believe that there was a beginning, not only to everything within the observable universe, but to that universe itself and everything that does, can, and will ever exist. Therefore, there must have been some kind of prime mover, and that prime mover was obviously the god of the religion in which I happen to have been brought up.
Exactly.
Checkmate, atheists. I've been Alex J. O'Connor, or Cosmic Skeptic. You can find me on social media here. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
And I agree with all the last stuff there. Go support him. He does a lot of good work.
Form of the argument is quite impressively simple, and I'm sure that most people listening will have at least heard it in passing. Would it be a fair analysis to say something of the following? The first premise is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The second premise is that the universe began to exist, and the conclusion which logically follows is that the universe had a cause.
Yes.
And this is a deductive argument, which means that if both the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. So the only way to attack this argument, the only way to raise objections, is raising objections with the premises. Now,
Right.
I find that most people, when they try to raise objections, they jump to the second premise. Something like the universe beginning to exist is quite a difficult thing to prove, it seems, and yet you've got quite an expansive literature on different reasons why we can know this to be the case. So perhaps we can start there before talking about the first premise. How can we know, let's say philosophically, because I know there are scientific ways and philosophical ways to look at this. Philosophically speaking, how can we make that assertion that the universe began to exist?
I do think that the second premise is the most controversial premise in the argument, and therefore the one to which I've devoted the most attention. Historically, the second premise that the universe began to exist was supported by philosophical arguments. It wasn't until the 20th century that there was any sort of empirical evidence for the beginning of the universe. And as I looked at the various arguments that were offered historically for the beginning of the universe, the finitude of the past, it seemed to me that two of them stood out. One would be the argument based on the impossibility of an actually infinite number of things in reality. And then the other would be the impossibility of forming an actual...
Which I believe that's like the Grim Reaper fallacy or whatever, the Grim Reaper dilemma or whatever it's called. It's Grim Reaper something. Basically just, and I could not explain it to like the way it means that, like how it works as far as like, explained with the concept of the Grim Reaper and the infinite number of Grim Reapers and blah, blah, blah. It's nonsense to me. But basically what they're saying is, again, like if it's infinitely in the past, you never have a present. And that's kind of where they're at there.
Infinite collection of things by successive addition. These arguments are independent of each other. Even if one fails, the other could still be sound. And so together, I think they provide very persuasive philosophical grounds for affirming the finitude of the past and hence the beginning of the universe.
Sure. So let's think about this. The difference between an actual and a potential infinite, which is the crucial distinction to make,
Yes.
as far as I understand it, is that an actual infinite is kind of what it says on the tin. It's an actually existing infinite number of things, as it were, that actually exist in reality, whereas a potential infinite is something that can tend towards infinity, such as dividing the space between 2 points on a ruler. You can divide that infinitely, but that doesn't mean that there are actually an infinite number of things between each point. Is that a fair analysis?
That's exactly right, Alex. And the concept of the potential infinite dominated Western mathematics and philosophy until the 19th century, when Georg Cantor, a German mathematician, discovered the concept of the actual infinite. So the notion of a potential infinite plays its role in calculus, where we think of infinity as a limit which a process approaches but never arrives at, whereas the notion of the actual infinite finds its application in infinite set theory, where mathematicians talk about sets that have an actually infinite number of members in them. And
so, yeah, again, like this is a lot of gobbledygook, I would say, of like, fucking around with the incalculability again of infinity. And that just seems to be a playground for these apologists, because they know that it's something that you can't really wrap your head around. We're gonna skip a little ahead here and get to some of the more interesting parts of these arguments.
And perhaps it raises the question of whether or not there is such a thing as a minimal interval of time, which I know is an open question.
Yes.
We should press the reason this is important to the argument, to the Kalam, is that essentially we're trying to address the idea that the universe could have been eternal, because this is one of the atheist escape routes many of the time, is to just say, well, look, yes, maybe there needs to be some kind of explanation for the causes that caused everything, but what if that just goes back eternally and the universe is eternal? And what you're trying to demonstrate here is that the universe can't be eternal because it leads to logical absurdities.
Oh, not logical, Alex. I would say metaphysical. There's no logical contradiction in the notion of the actual infinite. Infinite set theory is a well-understood branch of mathematics. It's perfectly consistent and coherent. But I maintain that when you try to instantiate it in the world of the real,
right,
that then it leads to these absurdities. And the Thomson lamp illustration is an example of that second argument that I mentioned for the finitude of the past, the impossibility of forming an actually infinite collection by successive addition, like switchings on and off of a lamp.
Sure. So this is why we can talk about the concept of infinity in mathematical literature, but that shouldn't give us reason to think that it can be substantiated in such a way that would affect the argument, right?
Yes, that's right. In mathematics, there are just all sorts of entities. For example, imaginary numbers and infinite dimensional spaces and so forth that cannot be physically instantiated, but they're perfectly consistent logically.
Yeah, so that would make it, that's like the difference between valid and sound. So, like, a valid argument is internally consistent, right? And that's why you say, like, mathematically, within these mathematics, it's internally consistent. There isn't anything necessarily inconsistent in the logic. However, it can't be sound, because a sound argument, if you want it to be valid and sound, that means the conclusions are either true or likely to be true. And since these things are untestable, hypothetical, mathematical, science and mathematics, really, at the end of the day, it's just mathematics. There's no way to test it. There's no way to demonstrate that it's possible, let alone likely. So it's not sound. It's valid.
Okay, so the second objection that this raises, and why it's important, is that you can ask the question, if an actually infinite number of things or number of events or something like that is impossible to be real, in the sense that we're using the term real, does God not count as an actual infinite?
Now, it's important to understand.
Okay, so this is, because basically what he's doing is he's needling at the special pleading that they do, because, they're always saying that, the universe could not possibly be infinitely old, otherwise we'd never arrive at today, right? But somehow their God is infinitely old and arrived at the time when he became Jesus and died on the cross and all those things, which if a God was infinitely old, he would never get to the age where he would become Jesus and die on the cross, according to the logic that they use to dismantle the argument that the universe is infinitely old.
Stand here, Alex, that this is not an objection to either premise. It would just show that the theist is going to have a problem too, but it doesn't do anything to refute the argument. Now, theists have typically, well, not typically, universally held that God is not composed of parts.
Yeah.
God is not an aggregate of definite and discrete elements that make up a collection, and therefore the notion of God's infinity is not a mathematical notion. It's not a quantitative notion. It's a qualitative.
See, and this is exactly why people like Shannon Q will sit there and say make the positive assertion that there is no God, which is something I don't do. Because I stand by my position, which is agnostic atheism. I know philosophy folks out there, ivory tower folks. I know that seems like a contradiction in terms if it's according to scholarship, whatever. But colloquially, it's fine to identify as both an agnostic and an atheist because I am not convinced in any God's existence or any set of God's existence. But the reason Shannon Q says that is because she says that she cannot find a single definition of God that is coherent. And this type of shit is why. Because, he listen to what he's saying. He's not made up of any parts. He's immaterial. It's nothing. None of these things make sense, in any way, shape, or form. They're outside of space and time, meaning they are nowhere, and they take up, their actions take up 0 seconds, and they aren't made of anything. That is incoherent, which is why, Shannon Q makes the positive claim that God does not exist because there are no coherent definitions for any gods that she has heard. Anyway, up until this point so far. As far as I understand, this is still her position. But, yeah.
Notion. It means things like God is perfectly holy, omniscient, omnipotent, timeless, spaceless, and so forth.
None of this makes sense.
Qualitative attributes go to make up God's infinity, but the infinity of God is not a quantitative concept.
Sure. The reason why I would have immediate trouble with this is thinking about, although the attributes of God that you mention are qualitatively infinite, there may be some room for applying quantitative infinites. For instance, if God is not dormant, right? If God is not just a kind of impersonal being that sits there doing nothing, we have an image of God that does things, that intervenes, that creates universes at particular times but not at others, would imply that perhaps you could ascribe to God something like an infinite series of events in terms of an infinite number of actions that he's caused, unless there's some point beyond which God is dormant. I don't see why you can't apply the same reasoning to say that if God commits actions, then God has committed an actually infinite set of actions.
What you're raising here, Alex, is the very interesting question of God's relationship to time.
Yeah.
And as you explained so well, if there is a series of successive events in God's life, then the same arguments against the infinitude of the past would apply to God that apply to the universe. And therefore, the classic proponents of this argument, like Al-Ghazali, argue that there is a beginning of time and that God existing beyond the universe, not before it, not before time, but beyond time.
What does that mean?
Is timeless.
How do you exist beyond time if you're not before time? You'd be outside of time, like completely. So an example of this in literature, I call it literature, comic books. They're literature to me. Okay, God damn it, all right. Is Mr. Manhattan. Mr. Manhattan is from Watchmen, and he exists outside of like any kind of temporal, any kind of temporal space, right? And time, right? And so he's like, he doesn't know where he is a lot of time. That's what makes the character so interesting, is a lot of times he doesn't know where he is in time because he's experiencing time simultaneously. So he's experiencing all these different events all at the same time because he is outside of time. Now, that was them basically trying to take this concept that William Lane Craig is trying to apply to the being that he believes in. And that was them trying to basically put it into comic form and sometimes in television form. If you watch the HBO show, which I highly recommend that you watch, Watchmen on HBO. It's an incredible show. Since we've had quite a bit of fun, with our thinking brain stuff, I thought it'd be a good idea to move on to something a little bit more fun. And that's the biggest. Bigots be crazy and make me insane. It's only fucked up shit they say. Bigots be crazy and make me insane. I wish they'd all fucking go away. This is Bigot Nick Fuentes, who is probably, he is the main bigot. It seems like all the other bigots are aspiring to be as bigoted as this particular bigot. I know I'm just beating that word over its head with itself. But I mean, God damn it, that's what he fucking is. But so I felt like this kind of related a little bit to what we were talking about, because we were just talking about infinity, And so let's see what this complete fucking moron thinks about infinity and about a particular thing. Here we go. Ready?
Oil is infinite. Okay, I'm sick of people saying that there's more of it than, because there's infinite amount of it. The earth makes more of it. Oil is not abiotic, okay? Or is the reverse. I don't know. It's not made from fossils, okay? Oil is not made from fossils. Oil is made inside the earth, and it comes out of the earth, and we'll never run out of it. There is so much oil, we will always have more of it, and,
Yeah, I don't. That's not true. Oil is absolutely finite. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? I hate to say that he's right, but oil and gas are organic and contain no fossils. While they may not be as exciting as gigantic dinosaurs, tiny bacteria, plankton, and algae really are the originators of oil and gas, which are natural organic substances. But they are definitely not infinite. Fucking idiots.
So why would we? God gave us oil to burn for energy. Why do you think God made oil? God made oil and put oil here, just like he put cows here, just like he put apples here.
But cows and apples have always been here. Why did it take so long for us to find and be able to use a resource that's basically more valuable than gold at this point, at the very end of because if you talk to any of these people, they're going to say that we are in the end times. Why did we wait? Why did God wait till the end times to give us a resource that we could have been using this whole time? If it's created by God for the earth and for humanity, why the fuck would what's going on there? Why did he decide to wait for so long for us to be oh, oil's a thing that helps us do different things? I'll wait until the earth is almost till I almost just before I destroy the planet. And then I'll give them oil, it's a relative term, right? I mean, think about it. There's millions of years of just dinosaurs just screaming, and that's it. And, when you wait until the last, end of when he's about to come back and, send hail and plagues and have, Jesus is going to ride on his horse with fire eyes and a sword tongue. He's waiting for, that to have almost happen before he gives us oil. A resource that we could have been using this whole fucking time.
God gave us oil to burn for energy because God knew this would be the course of human development, I'm sure. And then, so oil is God's gift to the world. Oil is God's gift to mankind.
What the fuck?
And so this electric alchemy.
It's amazing to me the leaps that these people will go through. You know, they'll just sit there and just say shit. Like, he's just saying stuff. He's just making shit up, you know? And that's like, but that's okay. That's like what he does, you know? It's fine as long as you believe in nonsense. You can just basically say whatever the fuck you want, and everybody's just like, sure, why not? Yeah. I mean, it's Christian, so maybe God, spirit magic told him that this is all true.
Is a crock of shit, okay? God gave us springs of oil bursting from the earth for us to burn for energy, and so. You know what else bursts from the earth? Fucking lava, okay? Which completely decimates islands, and complete, an entire cultures. I mean, if there's anything that looks like that could be argued as looking exactly like God's wrath, it's a fucking volcano. Just because something comes out of the earth doesn't mean that it's a gift from God, and vice versa. That doesn't mean that volcanoes are God's fucking judgment on islands that seemingly do nothing. Like, they're not doing anything wrong ever. Like, and they just get blown to bits or have like half of their community like eradicated because of a volcano that's right there. Anyway, point is, fucking shit comes out of the earth. It doesn't mean that it's neither good nor bad. It just is. It's a thing that happens on this planet because of the laws of physics and the different types of matter that our planet is made up of. So this is all legit. So
when stuff's legit is when you have to sit there and say that it's legit over and over. No, this is it. I'm telling you real true things. Yeah, it's real stuff. Yeah, it's all legit, okay? It's legit.
Burn oil so that we can create a stronger atmosphere to keep carbon inside the atmosphere. This is all scientific, okay? Oil
what the fuck?
Comes from Earth. The Earth makes more of it. We need more carbon in the atmosphere.
No,
we need
don't.
more carbon in the atmosphere because the atmosphere is being depleted. We need to keep putting.
Wow, you've got it like exactly backwards. Like we're putting out too much carbon, and it's causing the glaciers to melt and water levels to rise, and now we're having we're literally having refugees. Climate refugees because the water is raising so high. Venice is like almost completely destroyed at this point. Venice, Italy, is like it's like water world. It always reminds me of like Mario or something, like a place like where you would they had like Cloud World or whatever. That's like water world for Mario. You got to take boats everywhere and do everything. Anyway, the levels of water has like risen to such a point that it's like damaging everything. And people are literally having to leave because of the problems that all this extra carbon is causing in our atmosphere. And here he is going, we need it. We need the carbon. It's like, tell me, you don't know a thing like without telling me you don't know a thing.
Greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gas effect is what allows life on planet Earth. We need greenhouse gases. We need more of them. Everyone needs to eat as much meat as possible.
Look, just because greenhouses have plants in them and stuff, that doesn't mean that we need greenhouse gases, to be overwhelming our atmosphere to the point where it's like destroying all like life on a record level, and he's like, of course he misunderstands just basic science. Of course. Why the fuck, why do I expect anything less from this guy? I have no idea.
Needs to eat as much meat and drive as much as possible because we need greenhouse gases to sort of create a shield around the Earth from radiation from the sun and to keep vital things inside the planet. Not this alchemical electricity nonsense. That's the real science, and that's science. Scientists won't tell you that, but I am a scientist, and that is all real.
I am a scientist, and that is all real. You know what scientists do if you are a scientist? They demonstrate how they know things. They demonstrate that what they think might be the case, what they hypothesize, is actually true through testing and in peer review and all these other methods that actual scientists use, which is to prove that what you think is true is actually true. That's how science works. And it doesn't work where you just like in your weird, freaky, I don't know, like it looks like a Joker, like it looks like Joker's lair from like the Dark Knight movie or something. Anyway, it doesn't come from you just proclaiming that this is what the science says, But anyway, I thought we could have at least a little bit of fun with that, leave you on a bit of a high note, that, hey, remember, if you're feeling down, remember that bigots are fucking stupid, That's it's fun. It's also terrifying that there's so many of them and they're actually making laws and things. That's kind of terrible. Don't think about that. Don't think about that. I'm sorry. I'm getting you back on the negative. Bigots are stupid, and Nick Fuentes is probably the most fucking stupid well, I don't know. It's like I don't want to do a stupid off between these people because Marjorie Taylor Greene's a contestant, so it's you don't want to just start pitting them against each other for like intellect. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. And if you want to, please support the show by going to patreon.com/unapologetics, spelled like the show. You'll actually get 2 shows because you'll also get the Progressive Pals podcast on that feed as well. And you should go over, and if you ever want to watch us live, every night every Wednesday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know it's late. You can watch us record the Progressive Pals podcast live, and you can comment. We usually respond to comments and things like that. So definitely check it out. And share around, this show. I was really excited. I saw that we were actually listed on the best atheist podcasts, lists of 2020 or 2022. So on radio.fm. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And what do we say to the haters, discriminators, and masturbator shamers? Fuck off.